Hello everyone, welcome to today's video lecture. And in today's lecture I'll be talking about non-Newtonian fluids and how do we identify non-Newtonian fluids, how they are different from simple Newtonian fluids like water and air, and what kind of different mathematical models we use to model their flow so that um, we can predict their behavior under different conditions. So in your course you have learned about the Newton's law of viscosity. So Newton's law of viscosity is simple, which it tells us that the shear stress in a fluid is linearly proportional to the applied shear rate, and the constant of this linear relation, constant of proportionality, is basically the dynamic viscosity of the fluid. And in the case of Newtonian fluids, the fluids which follow the Newton's law of viscosity, this constant of proportionality is constant, meaning the viscosity of a Newtonian fluid is a constant. But non-Newtonian fluids are fundamentally different, and because they do not follow the Newton's law of viscosity. So air and water are typical examples of Newtonian fluids, and their viscosity is always constant. But let's consider a material like a toothpaste. So when the toothpaste is just sitting in the tube, you can consider it as a solid because it is not flowing, right? But as soon as you apply enough stress on the tube, it comes out of the tube and flows like a liquid. So this behavior is somewhere between a solid and a liquid, and there are ways to mathematically model this behavior, and that's what we'll be learning about in this lecture. And some of the topics like viscoelastic fluids are kind of advanced levels, because in there the relationship between the stress and the shear rate or shear strain is a little bit complicated, and there are differential equations involved. So I'll not be talking much about viscoelastic fluids. I'll just briefly talk about viscoelasticity. What I'll be focusing more is on the rate dependent behavior of various non-Newtonian materials. So let's get started. So on your screen you can see a definition of viscosity and shear flow. So viscosity, as you might know from your lecture on shear stresses, viscosity is the internal friction in the fluid, and it is a measure of resistance of the fluid to its flow. And intuitively speaking, we can relate viscosity to inverse of flowability. So if a fluid is more flowable, like let's say water, then it has a low viscosity, and if a fluid is less flowable, like let's say honey, then we say that it has a higher viscosity. And the way we measure viscosity is like in this cuvette device, where we have fluid stacked up between two plates, and we apply a shear rate. So if we move this plate to the right with a velocity capital U, and let's say this height is capital H, and we move the downward plate in the opposite direction by, let's say, minus U. So here du by dy will be 2U divided by H, and that is the rate of deformation of the fluid. And since we are applying a shear rate, we are shearing the fluid. That means there will be shear stresses generated in this fluid, and then if this fluid is a Newtonian, then the Newton's law of viscosity tells us that the viscosity of this fluid is the simple ratio of the shear stress in the fluid to the applied shear rate. So in a viscometer, we just measure the shear stress acting on the plate, and since we are moving the plate with a known velocity or a known shear rate, we can calculate the viscosity. Now for Newtonian fluids, viscosity is constant, but so if I plot the shear rate, the shear stress versus shear rate for a Newtonian fluid, shear stress is a linear function of the shear rate, and the constant of proportionality is viscosity. So if I plot it here, it will be a linear line passing through this origin with a slope of mu. So this is for a Newtonian fluid, but as I mentioned, non-Newtonian fluids, they do not follow the Newton's law of viscosity. So for a non-Newtonian fluid, the shear stress is some complicated function of the applied shear rate. Now usually the simplest case that we can consider is just a power law. Let's say the shear stress is a constant times shear stress is a constant times shear rate raised to some power n, and this n is called the power law index. And the non-Newtonian fluids which follow this relationship are called power law fluids. Now depending on whether this n is smaller than 1 or equal to 1 or greater than 1, we get different behavior. So if this n is, let's say, equal to 1, then if n is equal to 1, then we recover the Newtonian Newtonian fluid. But let's say n is not equal to 1, then we can rewrite this equation like this: k times gamma dot raised to n minus 1 times gamma dot. So now if you look carefully at the equation 2 and compare it with, let's say, this equation 1, you can see some similarity here, right? We can say that this term in the bracket k times shear rate power n minus 1, it looks like viscosity, right? It even has dimensions same as the viscosity. So this term is called the apparent viscosity or mu a, and since it is a function of shear rate, we can also write it as eta as a function of gamma dot, and this is called the apparent viscosity. Now again, in non-Newtonian fluids, concept of viscosity is not exactly applicable, because viscosity the definition of viscosity comes from the Newton's law of viscosity, and for non-Newtonian fluids, the Newton's law of viscosity is not applicable. But since understanding things through Newton's law of viscosity is easier, we just rearrange these terms so that this apparent viscosity can tell us something about the flowability of that fluid. So now, depending on whether n is less than 1 or n is greater than 1, so if n is less than 1, then that fluid is called shear thinning. or pseudoplastic. That's because for shear thinning fluid, as we increase the shear rate, its viscosity uh, actually decreases. And in this sigma in the shear rate versus shear stress versus shear rate diagram, we can draw a shear thinning fluid like this. And now if you look closely at any particular shear rate, if we find out the local slope of this curve, it basically gives us the apparent viscosity at that point. Now if the power law coefficient n is greater than 1, then that fluid is called shear thickening fluid. Or it is even called a dilatant. So these are just names given to these different materials by the scientific community, and since they are like very old, people still use them. Now if we plot the shear stress versus shear rate behavior of these shear thickening fluids, it looks something like this. So if you look at the slope at any point on this curve, which gives us the apparent viscosity, you will see that the apparent viscosity here, it increases with the shear rate. So for shear thinning fluids, the apparent viscosity, it decreases with shear rate, and for shear thickening fluids, is the opposite. Its apparent viscosity increases with the shear rate. Or dilatant. Now Newtonian shear thinning and shear thickening, they fit the classical definition of fluids. That is, if we apply an infinitesimal stress on these fluids, they will flow, right? They will deform. But we also have toothpaste, right, which does not flow unless we apply some threshold stress on it. So that behavior can also be represented on this shear stress versus shear rate plot, and I'll just show you how you can do that. I will use blue ink for that. So a toothpaste like fluid, it does not flow until we apply some initial threshold stress, and that stress is known as the yield stress for that fluid. And after we apply that shear stress on the fluid, it flows like a normal fluid, right? So then it might flow like a Newtonian fluid, or it might shear thin, or it might shear thicken like this. So depending on which kind of flow it observes after applying after applying the yield stress, we can so if its viscosity again is constant, or if its shear stress is a linear function of shear rate, then it is called a Bingham plastic. So these are various rate dependent behaviors for non-Newtonian fluids, and I'll show a few examples and nice videos which will basically tell you more about these fluids. So again, to summarize, A Newtonian fluid is shear stress is a linear function of shear rate. It follows the Newton's law of viscosity, and common examples are water, oil, honey, and glycerin. Now, shear thinning fluids. For shear thinning fluids, their apparent viscosity decreases with the shear rate, and this nice video shows a demonstration of a shear thinning fluid. So we have comparison between Newtonian fluid on the left and the shear thinning fluid on the right. So let's say there is a tank here, and we fill the tanks to equal heights with these Newtonian and shear thinning fluids respectively. Now as you open the tap, because the viscosity of the Newtonian fluid is constant, it starts flowing, but its viscosity remains the constant. So whatever is the velocity of this fluid that is coming out, it does not affect the viscosity of the Newtonian fluid. But on the other hand, initially the fluid is the shear thinning fluid, it comes out faster because there is a big pressure gradient due to the weight of this fluid in the tank, and because of that, initially its velocity is high. So that means the rate of deformation or the shear rate is high. So for a shear thinning fluid, high shear rate means its apparent viscosity is low. So initially the viscosity of the shear thinning fluid which is coming out is very low, and it flows very fast, and as a result this tank depletes very fast. But as the tank depletes, the shear thinning, the flow of the fluid, it decelerates. So if the flow decelerates, then that means its velocity is reducing and the rate of deformation is also reducing. And for a shear thinning fluid, a low rate of deformation or a low shear rate means its apparent viscosity is high. So as this tank depletes, since the velocity of the fluid coming out decreases, the apparent viscosity at the ejection point becomes large, and as a result it further slows down the flow, as you will see now. So the Newtonian fluid keeps flowing nice and regular, but now you can see the shear thinning fluid has stopped. See, there is still fluid in this tube, but it is not coming out at a very fast rate because since the flow velocity is very small here, the viscosity is very high, but the Newtonian fluid is still flowing nicely, and the Newtonian fluid will continue flowing till this tank is exactly empty. So here, yeah. Yes, so as it is summarized here, when opening the valve, the shear stress increases, causing the fluid to flow rapidly, and rapid flow means a very high shear rate, and a high shear rate means a low viscosity. Yes, and as the flow rate reduces, the viscosity of the shear thinning fluid increases, and it further decelerates the flow. However, the Newtonian fluid keeps flowing steadily. Now, next up, the shear thinning, the apparent viscosity of shear thinning fluids, it usually behaves like this. So for zero shear rate values, its viscosity is almost constant, and it is denoted by this um, this symbol eta naught. So the subscript 0 shows that it is the zero shear rate limit viscosity, and similarly in the very high shear rate limit, it again approaches a constant value, which is again denoted by eta infinity, which is the high shear rate viscosity. And in between these two extremes, the viscosity actually interpolates, and we can use different functions to interpolate this viscosity. One simple function is just a power law model, as I discussed before, where it approximates this reduction by a power law like this. Here n is less than 1, which basically tells us that it is a shear thinning fluid, and this model is usually applicable to molten chocolate or your ballpoint penning. But now if we have a fluid which observes this power law and also has a constant viscosity in the infinite shear rate limit, then we can model it using something called a Cisco model, which basically just has this extra constant added, which is for the infinite shear rate viscosity, and it is added to this normal expression for the power law. But if and this model is usually applicable to lubricating grease and various lubricating materials. And the next is Karreau-Krauss model or Karreau-Yasuda model, and this actually takes care of this entire regime from zero shear rate limit to infinite shear rate limit, and it also incorporates this intermediate interpolation as shown here, and this is typically this model is typically applied to polymer melts or suspensions which are made up of polymeric particles, like let's say you have polymers dissolved in a solution or even in water. So depending on your fluid, whichever, if you can choose a proper model which can be applied to the apparent viscosity of that fluid, so that then we basically have the function for the apparent viscosity. And now we can use this function in various pipe flows or while measuring the performance of pumps when it is pumping this kind of a shear thinning fluid. So these models make the analysis easier, and that's the application of these models. So again, like shear thinning fluids, we have shear thickening fluids, and in shear thickening fluids the apparent velocity increases with the shear rate, and again this a common example as for a shear thickening fluid, as you all might know, is oobleck, which is just a cornstarch suspended in water, and you all must have seen videos, right, where if you run on the oobleck solution, you can walk on it. It just behaves like a solid floor, but if you just stand on it, then you sink in it. It then behaves like a liquid. That's because when you are running, everything, the floor, the velocity gradients are very high, which in other words, it means the deformation rate is very high, and in shear thickening fluids, they have high viscosity when we apply a very high deformation rate. So that's why you can, when you run on the oobleck solution, it behaves like a solid, but when you stand, that means the deformation rates are very small, and then its viscosity is very small, and that means it behaves like a liquid. And this property of shear thickening fluids, that is the increase in their apparent viscosity with deformation rate, is very useful in applications like making armors or shock, where in applications where we want to absorb shock, because in let's say in a bullet armor, when the bullet hits the armor, it's coming at a very high speed, right? So that means when it enters the material which is shear thickening, it gives rise to very high deformation rates, and because of that, the local viscosity in that material becomes very high, and it can stop the bullet, or it can absorb the shock, and that's exactly what's shown in this video. So this container contains oobleck, and it is hit suddenly with a hammer, and you can see how well it can absorb the shock. Yeah, but sometimes this shear thickening property is a disadvantage. Let's say, so in industry we routinely mix various mixtures and suspension in a mixer, right? And let's say if we are trying to mix a material which is shear thickening, then if we suddenly increase the mixing rate, that could lead to sudden increase in the viscosity of that material, right? But so instead of mixing, it will just block the entire mixer, and sometimes it results in a tremendous torque, which could even like destroy the mixer. So while dealing with the shear thickening fluids, we need to be very careful about the flow rate and the operating conditions, so that we can prevent such accidents. And these accidents can even happen in pipelines. So let's say you are pumping shear thickening fluid, and if you pump it at a flow rate which is higher than some critical value, then the entire pipeline will suddenly jam, and again the stresses can be so high that the pipes can burst. Yeah, so I talked about pseudoplastics, that is shear thinning fluid, Newtonian fluid, and shear thickening dilatants. So one thing that is common among these is that all of these they flow or deform as even if we apply an infinitesimal stress. But there are some fluids like toothpastes or paints which do not flow if we apply a stress which is smaller than some threshold value, which is indicated here by tau naught. So this threshold stress which is required to make the fluids flow is usually called the yield stress, and if the applied stress is smaller than the yield stress tau naught, then the material behaves as a solid. But if the applied stress is larger than the yield stress, then flows and behaves like a liquid. So again, depending on whether the stress is related linearly to the shear rate after this yield stress, this can be classified into Bingham plastic or Herschel-Buckley type models. So in Bingham plastic, the shear stress is still linearly proportional to the shear rate, but in Herschel-Buckley we can again use something like a power law. So again, depending on whether n is smaller than 1 or n is larger than 1, the apparent viscosity can decrease or increase. So again, this nice video here shows mayonnaise and honey. So honey is a Newtonian fluid, its viscosity is constant, and it is also a it is not a yield stress fluid, so it will flow even if we apply an infinitesimal stress on it. And this here is mayonnaise, which is a yield stress fluid, and they are kept in a beaker, and we tilt the beaker. So as we tilt the beaker, the weight of these fluids, it acts in the direction of gravity, and that results in a shear stress. So since this honey is a Newtonian fluid, it just starts flowing under its own weight. But mayonnaise, the shear stress induced by the weight of this mayonnaise is not enough to overcome the yield stress, so it does not flow and just sits there like a solid. But now if you take a spoon and just shear this mayonnaise, you will easily overcome its yield stress, and it will deform easily then. So this video nicely shows the phenomena of yield stress and the difference between yield stress fluids and Newtonian fluids. And again, we can model their behavior using Bingham plastic, like linear law, or Herschel-Buckley types power law. And finally, these 3 videos, they are demonstrations of throwing or dropping a ball in a Newtonian shear thinning and a shear thickening fluid. So first is water, which is a Newtonian fluid, and as you can see, when you drop a ball, it just enters and keeps dropping, and finally, as you might know, it moves with a terminal velocity. But if you drop a ball in a shear thinning fluid, so ketchup is another example of shear thinning fluid. So as you can see, as the ball hits the ketchup surface, its velocity is very high. So that means the deformation rate is high and viscosity is very small. So as a result, you can see it deforms the ketchup a lot. That's because its viscosity is very small. But as the ball decelerates, the deformation rate also decreases, and the apparent viscosity increases, and that then easily resists further deformation, and then again it kind of goes back into its earlier solid-like state. That's because velocity decreases and apparent viscosity increases because it is a shear thinning fluid. And finally, again, oobleck, you are dropping a ball. So as we drop the ball, because of the high velocity, the deformation rates are high, and since oobleck is a thickening fluid, high deformation rates mean high viscosity. So when the ball hits the oobleck surface, it bounces just like it will bounce from a solid surface. But once it stops moving, then it starts to sink, because when the ball stops, the deformation rate is very small, and for shear thickening fluids, if the deformation rate is very small, its viscosity is very small and it behaves like a liquid. So these 3 videos nicely show different Newtonian shear thinning and shear thickening behavior. Next, now we have looked at the mathematical models to basically model the apparent viscosity or shear stress dependence on the shear rate, and we can use these models to predict the flow of these power law fluids through a pipe. And as you might know from your pipe flow lecture, in pumping and piping application in industry, this is the most common operation, and we routinely need to pump various kinds of fluids, and shear thinning and shear thickening fluids are no exceptions. So using this power law model, we can easily find out the expression of velocity profile. So let's say the flow here is laminar, then that means we can use the Navier-Stokes equations to find out the velocity profile. So if you do the calculation, the velocity profile for a Newtonian fluid comes out to be parabolic like this, and here u bar is the average velocity of the profile. But for a power law fluid, the velocity profile depends on the power law index n here like this. So if n is smaller than 1, that means the fluid is shear thinning, and if n is higher than 1, that means the fluid is shear thickening. So shear thinning fluid has a blunt velocity profile like this, which is shown in blue here, while for a shear thickening fluid, it has a more sharper profile, which is shown in green. And for a Newtonian fluid, the Reynolds number can be easily defined based on the average velocity as rho u bar, the diameter of the pipe, d, divided by the viscosity mu, and viscosity is constant. But for the power law fluid, as we know, mu is the viscosity is not constant, right? It is a function of shear rate. So we'll have to use the proper definition of viscosity and proper definition of this average velocity. And if you do the calculation, the Reynolds number in the case of power law fluids can be written like this in terms of its density, the average viscosity, the power law coefficient K, power law index N, and dH here is the hydraulic diameter, which is, if the pipe is circular, it is the same as the pipe diameter. And if we have a Newtonian fluid, then you know from your fluid mechanics lectures that if we increase the Reynolds number of a Newtonian fluid flowing through a pipe, then if the Reynolds number becomes larger than a critical value, let's say 2100 or 2300, then the laminar flow transitions to a turbulent flow, right? And we can also similarly come up with a criteria on the Reynolds number for a power law fluid, so that we can identify whether the flow is laminar or turbulent. And that criteria, it again depends on the power law index N, in this way shown here. So depending on whether N is smaller than 1 or larger than 1, your critical Reynolds number for transition will be smaller than that for a Newtonian fluid, or larger than that for a Newtonian fluid. So so this simple power law model can tell us so much about flow of these non-Newtonian fluids in a pipe, and we can even find out whether the flow will be laminar or turbulent, and what will be, since now that we have the velocity profile, you can easily calculate the shear stresses acting on the walls as well, right? And these shear stresses are needed to estimate the viscous losses, right? As you in pipe flow for Newtonian fluids, you use something called Moody's chart to calculate these viscous losses, right? And calculating these viscous losses is not that straightforward for non-Newtonian fluids, and hence these simple models can be very handy. So I'll just show quickly. So the tau wall, which is the shear stress at the viscous shear stress at the wall, is nothing but the viscosity of the fluid at the wall times the du by dr at the wall. Du by dr is basically the velocity gradient, and again the viscosity at the wall will be a function of the shear rate at the wall, right? So it will be a function of du by dr, which is, let's say, if we have a power law fluid, then it will be du by dr to power n. And again, du by dr at the wall can be found out by using this this velocity profile, and if you substitute them here, you will get the shear stress on the wall, and you can then use that shear stress to estimate the viscous losses. Now we looked at the pipe flow of these non-Newtonian fluids. Another important aspect of any piping system is pumping, right? And if you remember from your lectures, the typical head curve for a non-Newtonian fluid is a downward sloping parabola, right, like this, which is indicated in this solid red line. And the typical system curve for a Newtonian fluid is again this solid red line, which is upward going, again parabolic kind of curve. So q square, and this is minus q square, and the point at which both these curves intersect, that's the operation point. But again, if you use the various power law models and do the calculations, or if you use, let's say, this normal model for stress, which is applicable for yield stress fluids as well, then you can actually find out the pump curve, and which is again here shown in this dotted red line. And as you can see, it is not a simple curve like in the case of a Newtonian fluid. It initially dips, attains a minima, then again increases, attains a maxima, and then continues dipping like in a Newtonian fluid. And also the system curve is also not monotonically increasing like in the case of Newtonian fluid. It increases with a certain slope, then after a while it increases with a different slope. So because of that, if the yield stress of the fluid is very high, then it is possible that the system curve and the pump curve, they actually intersect at more than one point, as again shown here. So there are 3 different operation points, and sometimes that can lead to instabilities. So let's say we are operating at this point, and the flow rate is, let's say, Q1, and because of some external condition or something going wrong, the pressure head created by the pump, it fluctuates and it dips from this value H1, let's say. Then what that means is this operational point is not valid anymore, and the pump suddenly goes to the other operation point which is at a lower head, let's say H2, and then the flow rate through the pump also changes to something, let's say Q2. And if you compare for this small drop in the pump head, you get a significantly higher decrease in the flow rate through the pump. So because of this, these operation points can be unstable, and oftentimes they are undesirable. So again, while choosing a pump for non-Newtonian fluids, these simple models can be really helpful for choosing an appropriate pump. And many a times these kind of charts are provided by manufacturers, which could help you select an appropriate pump. So let's say we want to pump a fluid which is composed of particles suspended in a liquid, and their concentration is given by Cw, and let's say S is the specific gravity of the solid particles, and there we also know the average particle size. Then if you know the average particle size, start from there. Then let's say the solids have a specific gravity of 2. Then start from the particle size, go vertically up till you hit the line of specific gravity 2, and let's say the particles have a concentration of 35%. Then go horizontally and hit the line of 35%, and then now you extend this line vertically as shown. You will hit a point on this upper x-axis, and which it usually gives us the either the head-on slurry with respect to head-on water, which means the ratio of head produced by the pump when we are pumping slurry relative to the head produced by the same pump when we are pumping the Newtonian fluid water from it. And as you expect, it is usually smaller than 1. That's because pumping non-Newtonian fluids usually requires higher head. So again, these kind of graphs are usually given by manufacturers of the pump, and these could help you in choosing an appropriate pump. Yeah, so we talked and discussed the most important rheological property, the viscosity, and its dependence on shear rate. But another interesting phenomena in non-Newtonian fluids is the presence of normal stress. So imagine you're shearing Newtonian fluid. Then if you are just shearing it, we just expect to have shear stresses. If you are applying a shear rate, then we just expect to have shear stresses in that fluid and no other stresses. So if you remember, if we draw a fluid element, then in addition to shear stresses, there can be normal stresses acting on the fluid element as well, right? So a typical property of non-Newtonian fluids is that if we apply a shear rate, in addition to the shear stresses, there are non-zero normal stresses as well. So it is shown here. So we are applying a shear rate of known value, then we have a shear rate as well as a normal stress. And the way this normal stress is measured is by measuring the force perpendicular to this plate, and this normal stress which arises when we shear non-Newtonian fluids results in interesting phenomena like rod climbing, which is again shown in this video. So the left one is Newtonian fluid, right one is non-Newtonian fluid, and as you can see, if we rotate this rod, it results in a shear rate which is in the radial direction. But in a Newtonian fluid, that only results in a shear stress. But in a non-Newtonian fluid, in addition to the shear stress, it results in a normal stress as well, and that normal stress makes this non-Newtonian fluid to climb up the rod, and that's known as the rod climbing effect. Another interesting phenomena is the bumpy interface. So let's say you just have a Newtonian fluid, and if you try to make it flow through on a slope, you can imagine that the interface will always be parallel to the slope, and it will be perfectly smooth, it won't be bumpy. But now if we have a non-Newtonian fluid instead of a Newtonian fluid, as you can imagine, if it is flowing down a slope, there is a shear rate, and because of that shear rate there is a shear stress. But in addition to the shear stress, now that we know there are normal stresses as well, so the shear stress acts parallel to the slope, but the normal stress, it acts perpendicular to the slope, right? So because of that, some of the interface is, it actually bulges like this, which is again shown here. So the normal stresses, they results in this bulge on the surface of the fluid. This again is shown by passing these laser sheets through the interface, and a straight line here means the interface is perfectly horizontal. But as the fluid flows downward, because of the normal stresses, the surface curves, and which can be seen by these curved laser sheet light. And finally, another interesting phenomena is die swelling. So the left one is again a non-Newtonian fluid, and the right one is a Newtonian fluid, and we are making it pass through a syringe. So as you can see, as this non-Newtonian fluid comes out of this small opening, it swells in the horizontal direction like this. But a Newtonian fluid, it does not swell. And this is a typical polymer solution. It is produced by dissolving polymers in a solution. And if we increase the concentration of these polymers, you can expect the swelling to increase. So again, which is shown in this video. So a high concentration polymer has a bigger swelling compared to a low concentration polymer which has a small swelling. Again, these, as I mentioned, these can be explained by using normal stresses. So let's say I'll explain the rod climbing first. So if you are rotating a rod like this, then if you look at the fluid around it, the velocity in the fluid varies linearly. So it is 0 at the outer edge, and it is omega times the radius of this rod at the rod surface. And if we just assume a linear velocity profile, we can see that there is a velocity gradient in the radial direction, and because of that there are shear stresses which are again in the radial direction. But since shear stresses lead to normal stresses in Newtonian fluids, we can expect a force in the normal direction to the radial direction, which is basically upwards here. This is the normal stress N, and because of that it pulls the liquid up, and that results in a rod climbing effect. On the other hand, if you look at the die swelling, so as I mentioned, die swelling is typically observed for polymeric solutions. So when the polymeric solution is inside the syringe, the polymers are usually are coiled, and they are usually in such compact micro structure. And as soon as they come out of the syringe, what happens is the folded polymers, they relax and they unfold. So as they unfold, their size increases. So then you can expect to have a bigger radius of this flow as they come out, because the folded polymers, they have unfolded and relaxed and become bigger. So yeah, this is like completely different to a Newtonian fluid, because let's say if we have a Newtonian fluid, then since the velocity here is increasing, so as the fluid comes out, you can expect, let's say the velocity just here is at the syringe is v1, and somewhere down, because the gravity is acting on it, velocity v2 somewhere down is v2 is greater than v1, and since we have the same flow rate at 2 and 1, this means the area at 2 is smaller than area at 1. So a Newtonian fluid actually contracts like this. So yeah, dye swelling is exactly non-intuitive and completely opposite to a Newtonian fluid. So yeah, so non-Newtonian behaviors can lead to these interesting and fascinating non-intuitive phenomena. And yeah, so that's it for this lecture. And if you want to know more or learn more about these non-Newtonian fluids and their rheology, you can watch this classical lecture on rheological behavior of fluids, and there are like bunch of different examples, the examples that I gave you plus some more. The only drawback is since it is old, it is black and white, but everything is explained very beautifully there. You can watch that. And again, in addition to shear thinning and shear thickening, which is basically the apparent viscosity being a function of shear rate, the apparent viscosity can also be a function of time. So the viscosity of the material can also change with time, and if the viscosity decreases with time, then that material is called thixotropic. However, if the viscosity increases with time, then that material is called rheopectic. And if you want to learn more about these materials, you can go to this link and watch it. Yeah, so that's it for this lecture. Thank you.